Hi everyone, thanks so much for your involvement in the Swan Young Changemakers conference. I'm here with Jason Clare, the Minister for Education, to chat about some of the feedback we received.
G'day Zanita and g'day everybody. There was some really valuable feedback that came from young people in your community as part of this session, and one of the themes that came up consistently was how do we better support public schools? Specifically, how can we better support struggling students by funding extra classes? And that is so important because every Australian, regardless of where you live, how much your parents earn or the colour of your skin, should have access to a quality education and given every chance to succeed when they get there. Recently, I was lucky enough to be over in Perth with the Prime Minister and yourself, and we signed an agreement worth $1.6 billion with the WA government to fully fund all WA public schools. This is making good on that promise that David Gonski spoke about more than a decade ago. And it's a deal that boosts funding to schools right across WA and means that every public school student, whether they're in Perth or Port Hedland or Bunbury or Broome, will be better off. But it's not just about money, it's where it goes. This money isn't a blank cheque. It's tying that $1.6 billion in funding to real and practical reforms that are designed to make a difference, particularly to young people from disadvantaged backgrounds and young people who fall behind when they're little at school.
So where will this money be invested?
Okay, so for young people in your community, you mentioned the need for extra support for students who are struggling and falling behind. That's one of the areas that this funding will go into. We know that if you can identify a child early who's falling behind and you can provide them with extra support, then you can make the world a difference. So this money will be invested in practical things like phonics checks and numeracy checks for children when they're really little, in their first years of school, and then extra investment in things like catch-up tutoring. And that involves taking a young person out of a class of 30 into a class of maybe 3 or 4. And we know that when you do that right, that a child who falls behind can learn as much in 6 months as they'd normally learn in a year. In other words, they catch up. And if children catch up when they're young, then they're more likely to go on and finish high school and then go on to TAFE or to university. And there's also a real and obvious link between education and health as well. Children who are experiencing mental health challenges are more likely to be absent from school than other children. And we know that by year 9, they're about 1.5 to 3 years behind other children in their class in terms of literacy and numeracy. So this funding doesn't just go to things like catch-up tutoring, it's also investing in things like psychologists and counsellors to provide more wraparound support for schools, because we know that can make all the difference in whether a child finishes school or not.
That's so cool to hear, and it's interesting because the Young Changemakers also brought up mental health as an issue. So it's amazing that you're doing this wraparound support. And I think that every student deserves access to a quality education. And I know how important this $1.6 billion will be for students, teachers, and public schools all across WA. And as the Minister said, there was some really valuable feedback from the Young Changemakers, and what you said means that we have the opportunity to actually implement the changes that you guys were talking about. So thank you for sharing your views.
Yeah, thank you.